Indian Legends of the Fairy Crosses, created, produced, and directed by Reverend Dr. Dikki Jo Mullen. In this video, Dr. Mullen will explore the various legends of the fairy crosses and how one might purchase a fairy cross if they would like to.
This is astrologer Dikki Jo Mullen in Orlando, Florida, with some thoughts to share about the legends of the fairy cross and the mineral Staurolite. Astrology links often with gemstones and metals, and the hidden qualities and traits of a favorite birthstone are one easy way to see how the theory works. But few of the various legends told throughout the world about stones and gems, not even that of the philosopher's stone, are quite as beautiful and poignant as those of that remarkable mineral known as Staurolite. This comes from the Greek words meaning cross and stone, but it's commonly called the fairy cross. These unusual stones, singular stones of aluminum, iron, and silica, form either perfect cross-like structures or perfect right angles, and they can resemble the Celtic, Roman, Maltese, and Scotland's St. Andrew's cross in various forms. Perfect specimens of these are rare and highly prized by mystics and collectors. Often those that are sold have actually been filed out of the matrix and then repaired with clay or even completely simulated. Usually fairy crosses are of a dark, opaque, reddish-brown or black in color. The cover slide illustrates some examples, and are about an inch or so in length. Sometimes artisans will polish especially nice specimens and mount them in gold to create talismans which become precious jewelry. For hundreds of years, fairy crosses have been carried as lucky charms to ward off bad luck in the form of evildoers, ill health, accidents, and natural disasters. It's even rumored that at least 3 United States presidents, including Teddy Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson, as well as other historic figures, have carried these crosses, believing them to be powerful talismans. Do stones have an energy? Well, think about your computer. Without the quartz crystal, you wouldn't have it. And the crystals and gemstones of other types all have equally powerful properties that we are all learning to use and direct to make our lives better. Just carrying them will help a great deal and make a big difference. There's a traditional Native American ancestor story that relates teardrops of the shed by the Yunwi Swanee. These were tiny fairy-like figures that became fairy crosses. These tiny fairy spirits could be seen moving through the forest as helpful and very elusive and timid and sensitive creatures that would often appear when least expected, and they're akin to the little people, the wee folk, leprechauns and so forth, that we see in the cosmology around the world. In Hawaii, they become the mini huna, and a group of them were celebrating one evening in the mountains of the Carolinas with songs and dance. Suddenly a foreign messenger arrived, could it have been an alien, bringing the sorrowful account of the crucifixion of Christ. This horrible story caused the wee folk to weep and weep, and their falling tears became small crosses which covered the ground. And some of the cross talismans became sacred symbols thought to predate the introduction of Christianity to indigenous peoples by at least 12,000 years. So this isn't necessarily a Christian symbol, but perhaps the popular particular legend of Christ and the crucifixion and the deeper sorrows veil a long-lost way of life and the sorrow for it, the sorrowful vanishing of a lost culture in another way. By some accounts, the fairy spirits were never seen again after the messenger interrupted their happy party with the sad news. Others say whispers can be heard still in the sighs of gentle breezes along the riverfront and in the treetops of the wee folk. Cherokee elders sometimes tell of how a fairy cross will give the bearer the gift of invisibility at will. Have you ever wanted to visit someone and be invisible to see what was going on? That's kind of an irresistible idea, isn't it? Others say the talismans will reward good and kind actions. A more sinister power associated with these intriguing stones is that they give the bearer an ability to travel underground and surface among the enemy in order to surprise an enemy tribe. This brings an advantage in battle, the element of surprise and frightening ability to scalp an adversary. In more contemporary metaphysical teachings, the fairy cross has been linked to the root and crown chakras. Their attributes include recovery, healing, and practicality. The beginning of the root chakra in the body to the crown, which represents higher consciousness, give the fairy crosses an attribute of recovery, healing, and practical survival. Fairy crosses are thought to carry the earth's nurturing forces and bring a reminder to honor our planet Earth. They enhance meditation and will attract practical solutions to everyday problems. They represent an earthy prosperity stone energy. Fairy crosses are also credited with highlighting psychic insights, especially in regard to the need for grounding and clarity. Some say the fairy crosses adopt the owner instead of the other way around, forging a connection with the little people. I received my own fairy cross. It is visible on the slide at the beginning, but here it is with a little booklet from a beautiful lady whose name I never knew. She was starting an Indian museum with a Florida artist, E.H. Barnhill, in the 1970s. And I was wandering along the area of US 1 near Sebastian, Florida, as I often did on my own at that time in my life, and happened upon the museum. I was the only visitor there, and later it went out of business. But I didn't have any money to buy any of the wonderful things on display, but I did go through the museum, and this was impressed upon me with the legend, and it did seem to bring a turn for the better. I was able to get admitted to a university and move forward. Would it have happened anyway? We don't know. But something happened that was a turn for the better that long ago warm afternoon when I received a fairy cross, and I'm completely convinced that they are akin to the quartz crystal and other legendary stones. Think of the Hope Diamond. There's a negative stone, but there's a lot to support that there's a force field around it. Overall, in modern spiritual practices, fairy crosses have a witchery about them that promotes a positive mindset and an upbeat emotional state. They're credited with helping trauma victims. The fairy cross is thought to bring a positive spin on an undesirable situation. Their energy is calming and seems to quell angry or negative feelings. The Blue Ridge Mountains in the United States of Virginia, North Carolina, and Georgia, and also Nevada and Mexico are among the very few places on Earth where fairy crosses can be found. However, they're really quite common in these parts of the United States, and hikers often find them. Visit Fairy Stone State Park in Stuart, Virginia. They have a website, a lot of information as far as finding the very best place to hunt for your own fairy cross. Park rangers will offer complimentary guides telling more about the unique history of these stones. There's also a gift shop with Staurolite fairy crosses available for purchase. And the Staurolite is the official state mineral of Virginia. The Cherokee County Museum in Murphy, North Carolina has a wonderful collection of fairy crosses, as does the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. They have several fairy crosses of exceptional, immense size exhibited. There's another stone that poses as a fairy cross. I guess Templeton wanted us to be aware of that. He made a cameo appearance. Oh, Templeton. And this is an example of it. Looking carefully, and you can see this maybe more clearly on the cover slide, is a stone cross that's deeply embedded and one-dimensional in a mineral. It's a natural formation, and these are often found along in Quebec, Canada, but they aren't technically Staurolite or fairy crosses. Instead, they're a calcite carbonate disc, smooth and flat on at least one side, and then marked with a cross on the other. These stones are a kind of cement containing glacial clay, calcite, and sand, and they can contain fossilized microorganisms which look a lot like hieroglyphics. The Canadian fairy stones tend to be white, pale gray, and beige. Several of the discs can be linked together. They often are much lighter in color in the Staurolite, and they're also called hurricana. The Canadian fairy stones are carried by native people, and they do have a talismanic effect to aid in hunting and fishing expeditions, and are also thought to bring protection from spirits, to attract prosperity and good health. It's interesting for those of you who enjoy stones and minerals to learn more about the different types of Staurolite and the intriguing minerals and energies attributed to them. This is Dikki Jo Mullen in Orlando, Florida, wishing you happy hunting and good luck and blessings.